All right. So, Gabe, I want to go ahead and just start this off real quick. I just want to go ahead for those that don't know in the room because I didn't really hear about you till a couple weeks ago. I just want to I just want to know exactly. Can you give us like a just a brief just let us know about your background real briefly, where you come from, how long you've been doing what you've been doing. Just to go ahead for people in the space that don't know you, can you just give us a little rundown of your background real quick?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. So, hey everybody, and thanks for being here. My name's Gabriel Piemonte. I have lived in Chicago for 24 years. I'm from Boston, Massachusetts originally. I've been involved. The first work I did that it was involving the Black community would be in 1986. Um, in Chicago, I've been doing work around economic justice on the South Side since about 22 years ago, when a group of us started organizing what became the Southside Community Federal Credit Union, which is a financial cooperative that is Freedman owned. Um, I've done additional work of that nature in the South Side over the last couple of decades, including a a project where there was a church that burned in the neighborhood. It was a landmark church. We fought to save it. We raised a bunch of money, and we brought the money to the owners and essentially negotiated a team, a restoration team that was all black in exchange for giving them $650,000, and over time, over $1 million in total. They agreed to that, and so we were able to secure jobs for a couple different layers of black crews. It's kind of a complicated. It was a historic restoration, so there was like a roofing group. There was a group doing the interior and so on. I ran in 2019 for the same position, which is alderman, Fifth Ward alderman. The Fifth Ward is South Lakefront, Chicago, South Lakefront, South Side. It includes Hyde Park, which is where the University of Chicago is. It also includes South Shore, which is a historically significant neighborhood for the black community, and it includes a bit of Woodlawn and some other a bit of one or two other neighborhoods. At that time, it was clear that the sitting alderman was making decisions, especially in relation to the Obama Center, which is in the ward and being constructed as we speak, that were going to be dangerous and disadvantageous for the people in the community that I was, friends with, including potentially me and my family. And I made a list of neighbors, of black neighbors who I thought would be strong candidates. Called them, tried to persuade each one of them to run. They declined, and at least a couple of them had said to me, I'm not going to run. You got to be crazy to run for alderman. Why don't you do it? And so I did. So I made the decision. I talked to some additional people. I had a long talk with my wife, and we ran. And we did pretty well. We didn't win, and there was a runoff that we were about 250 votes shy of getting into, but we did, pretty well. In part, as part of that campaign, I was talking about property redistribution and, to a limited extent, about reparations and reparative justice, but not in the way that we're doing it this time.
Real quick, Gabe, before we get that far, just for those that don't know exactly, what's your political affiliation as well?
Independent. I don't have a political affiliation.
No.
Although historically, for a lot of my life, I would have been considered a Democrat, and I would say in the last 10 or 15 years, just in terms of my policies, what I recommend, what I've worked on. If we were in Europe, they'd probably call me a social Democrat. It's kind of like a left of Democratic position. But I'm running independent. We're not a part of the Democratic or the Republican Party. And I have support from both Democrats and Republicans in terms of financial support and other kinds.
Okay, so, Gabe.
I can just wrap it up and say I was approached by reparationists during that time, around 2019. One of whom said to me, you should just be saying reparations. You talk about it a little, but you should just come out and commit to it. And we started having a conversation, and that led to, other conversations. Marlon Watson, and I got together and started having some conversations. I met Arthur Ward, who I see in the audience, and it kind of went from there. And here we are today. So that was, maybe 4 or 5 years ago, and I started being involved in the reparations movement, and got more and more deeply involved. I was as supportive as I could be from Chicago for Marcel's campaign, which to me is a watershed event in the history of reparations, and I think we'll see in the history of American politics over time. And then I was very pleased to make his acquaintance along with a bunch of other leaders in the reparations movement in Atlanta last fall, and here we are now.
Okay, real quick, for those that don't know exactly, what is your platform all about? I know you said that you're on the south side, basically of Chicago.
Yes.
So exactly explain to everybody what your platform is.
Absolutely. So let me say right now that you can look at the elements of it at gabe45.com, so you can feel free to take a look at the website. And I've tried to be as explicit as possible so people can literally take elements and click on them and they see bullet points. This is the idea. And the reason we're even talking about reparations in a local campaign is that our economic policy and a lot of our social policy and other elements are centered in freedmen needs and in really looking at the 58% of this ward who are the vast majority of which are Black Americans. So 58% of the ward's Black. We probably have 2 or 3% who have immigrated from Africa and in the Caribbean, and so maybe a little less than that are freedmen, but the vast majority. And so it's a freedmen majority ward. We're a freedmen first campaign, and that means we're centering policies. We start with what about freedmen, and we build out from there.
Now, real quick, not to cut you off, real quick, because I know you kind of.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, I just kind of want to get this in. I mean, just give us a understand why are you the best candidate that you feel for this position in Chicago as alderman?
So that's a good question. A lot of reasons. I'm the only candidate, with one exception, who was willing to stand up to the sitting alderman and run against her. No one else has run against her. So these are people, at least one of which, but others that I have heard were afraid to confront the alderman. I say at least one because literally one of these people I tried to recruit, and he said he was afraid of the alderman. Well, Chicago isn't. This is rough politics. When I ran in 2019, I was broken into twice, my campaign office. I had a reverend to come in, a supposed reverend to come in and try to con us out of money. And I mean, there were just all kinds of behind the scene things that went on. This is tough stuff. If you're afraid of one alderman, you're not going to survive. There are 50 aldermen in Chicago City Council. You got to be able to stand up to people. I have stood up to the Proud Boys. I have stood up to the Fraternal Order of Police. I'm somebody who's going to tell it how it is, and you may like it or you may not like it, but you're going to know where I stand. I have garnered 25% of the vote in the last election. There are 11 candidates. So the math on that is it's going to be hard for anyone to get a clear majority in the first round. So just in terms of capacity, we have a lot of capacity. We have a bunch of people who have pulled the lever for me once. Until the big interest started putting money in the PACs and other people who have close to unlimited capacity to put money in, we were the lead in donations, personal donations. We may still have more personal donations than anybody else in terms of money. I don't know if other people, at this point are getting, more personal donations or not, but we were in the lead at that time. We are probably at this point, we probably have more national support than any other candidate. And so these are a lot of and I could go on and on about, benchmarks that I think show our strength, but we also have the only platform that mentions reparations. And we have the only platform that centers freedmen. So from my point of view, if you're not working for the majority of people in the ward, who are you working for? So it's a bunch of white people who think that I would be a good candidate in the north end of the ward. And there are a bunch of people who support reparations who also think that I would be the best person for them because no one else is talking about what matters to them. And not just reparations, but a reparations framework. And we'll get into this. But we're not trying to talk about local reparations. There is no such thing, in my view. And as it has been explained to me, and as I've learned from the extraordinary reparationists across the country that I have the honor of knowing, we're using the reparationist frame to gain an understanding of what needs to be done in a city that has exploited, abused, and oppressed freedmen for decades, for over a century, for sure.
Real quick, Gabe, but let me get you to land your plane real quick, because after the actual Q&A that we're going to have here, I want you to go ahead and address questions and stuff that people are going to also put in the comment section as well, too. So do you have an issue with that tonight? Okay.
No, not at all, sir. Go right ahead.
Okay, so after we conclude this, and this is just going to be a short question and answer, because I know people, they want to ask you questions. So we're going to go and we're going to take actual questions out the comment section and ask you. So everybody, if you can, go ahead and get your questions ready, because once this is concluded, we're going to go ahead, read the questions that you want to ask Gabe. And Gabe, you go ahead and answer to the best of your ability. Also, I just want to say this right here real quick. Like I say, I just heard about you a couple weeks ago, so I did not know who you were until I think it was a space that Marcel had. I didn't attend that space, and I heard in the actual space we had somebody mention your name. So this is the first time that you and I have ever really had any communication outside of setting up this actual Twitter space right here. So like I say, I don't know much about you and about what you stand for in Chicago as well. So we want to use this space so you can go ahead, because I'm in Florida, so I'm not endorsing you. I don't have anything against you at the same time as well either. But, I know you're trying to get your message out there. I don't know how many people in this space also may be from Chicago as well, too, from the 5th Ward as well, too. So I don't know exactly, if we have some people in the actual 5th Ward that's in this space as well, too. So we want to go ahead. We want to understand exactly what your platform is. And I want to ask you a question as well, too, here, like, how do you plan on helping Black Americans economically in Chicago?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And to me, that's the only question, really, because we are in absolute crisis in Chicago, like in a lot of other parts of the country, in the in the black parts of the city. Of course, everywhere there's economic strain, but it's exacerbated. So the biggest issue that we have in the 5th Ward, in my opinion, is housing. And there's a lot of data and a lot of experts who would agree with me. The Obama Center took 19 acres of public land in the 5th Ward. We have a lakefront park. Barack Obama took almost 20 acres of that park, and he's building a big facility, like a convention center type thing. And it's going to also have like some other elements to it. And that has triggered housing speculators to come into our neighborhoods and take the already kind of fragile housing ecosystem and just shake it upside down. So we have people, for example, I mean, these are, neighborhoods, 70-75% renters. We do have, some homeowners, and we can get into whether we need more property ownership or not. But the point is, a lot of those folks are using subsidies in one way or another. My own building is more housing choice voucher users than market rate people. That means that when the market becomes volatile, it has real consequences for a lot of people who live in our communities. And we have things happening like a developer will build a condominium building, and they will engineer a sale of one of those condos for $750,000. This isn't a hypothetical. I'm describing a condominium building that I can walk to. Now, nothing in my community, no condominium, let me say, in my community is in the natural market is going to go for $750,000. But what they're doing is priming the pump. So now people have the perception that you can buy something in Woodlawn that will be worth $750,000. So now people start buying and they start speculating. And it's not about, I want to buy in an up and coming neighborhood. It's about, I want to trade on some commodities that are going to increase in value quickly overnight. And so you have basically people treating it like it's gambling, not like it's an investment. So In South Shore, which is another neighborhood in our ward, it actually represents a pretty large percentage of the ward. In the last couple of years, we've had the following statistics: the highest eviction rate in the city, the highest foreclosure rate in the city, and the highest homicide rate in the city. And we know that housing insecurity and violent crime are linked almost causally, that the more insecure people are in terms of their housing, the more violent crime that you have. And in these communities, especially, again, I'll say South Shore is a significant part. So looking at the statistics in South Shore, time and time and time again.
Okay, real quick, Gabe. Hey, real quick, Gabe. Let me get to another question. I know you're kind of cooking a little bit, but let me go ahead. We know that Chicago, with Mayor Lori Lightfoot, is considered a sanctuary city. Do you support illegal immigration? How do you, if not, how do you plan on curbing and stopping illegal immigration in Chicago, or being a part of it? I know you one person can't do it, especially if you're alderman, but what are your plans in terms of combating illegal immigration in Chicago?
So we have right in my neighborhood in Woodlawn, there are schools that were closed, that were elementary schools that kids were going to. The mayor, the last mayor, Rahm Emanuel, said we can't afford to keep these schools open, and so they closed them. And now one of those schools is being used as basically a kind of housing for immigrants, undocumented immigrants, and they're putting $1.5 million into that building. So literally, they said they couldn't afford to have kids learn in the building, but now they're spending money for people who aren't even citizens. So I say, say every place is a sanctuary city. My position is there has to be a Freedmen's Bureau. You have to have so you've got these new America departments that are popping up all over the country. And my response to that, and I say this with Mark King Carter, who has helped craft, we're very specific and very clear on how we're going to kind of work in cooperation on this stuff. We demand a city level Freedmen's Department to deal with issues specifically for freedmen. And I will demand in my ward that any money the mayor, as you said, I can't stop the mayor from doing what he or she wants to do. But what I can do is say, I am not going to support step one you take towards any investment in resources for immigrants in my ward until I have triple that for freedmen. So if you're going to put $1.5 million for housing into my ward, that's your proposal for a group of undocumented people, I want $4.5 million in housing. And I'm not saying that's all I want. I'm saying just in exchange for that. Just like voting is an exchange, all politics is an exchange. So I will use that to leverage my position to get more resources for freedmen. I'm not going to be able to stop this from being a sanctuary city, but my response every single time is going to be about, what about sanctuary for freedmen against police brutality? What about sanctuary for freedmen against predatory landlords? What about sanctuary for freedmen against the mistreatment that has happened for decades and over a century in the city? And I want that redressed, or you're going to hear these lectures every single time you bring any kind of an immigration-related proposal to city council. And that's the approach I'm taking. Like you said, I can't ban it, I can't stop it, but what I can do is I can use it as a tool to get more resources for my ward. And what I will say about that is what I will say about everything else: freedmen first. Because if we don't take care of the people who have built the south side of Chicago, just like they built the rest of the country, then we're not going to have a country much longer.
Real quick, what's your relationship and your rapport with the Black Americans in the actual city of Chicago?
Okay, I'm not real sure. I can say it this way. Everyone I'm working with the exception of two people, everyone who is like a full-on devoted part of this campaign is a freedman. We got about 20 people working on this all the time. 18, 17 are freedmen. One's me, and then there's two other people. There's an Italian woman who's working with us, and there's a Mexican woman who's working with us. It's a freedman operation. We're freedmen first. And when I say when we're going to win, or when we're going to get in, or what we're going to do, I'm not talking about me like I'm a royalty. I'm literally talking about people whose names many people in here will recognize. I'm talking about Cynthia McDonald. I'm talking about Arthur Ward. I'm talking about Marlon Watson. We're going to come into this office in the Freedmen's Bureau the local Freedmen's Bureau that we're going to establish for the 5th Ward together. And we're going to operate those things together. As a matter of, since you're asking about relationships, which is kind of a big question, just as a matter of fact, I'm married to a beautiful woman from the West Side. We have 6 beautiful kids, who are stepkids, but they're my kids. So, six beautiful Freedmen children. And, this is where I live. I live in a neighborhood that's over 80% Black. And when there are problems in the community, we work together to fix them. When there are opportunities in the community, we work that way too. This is where I am. This is who I am. So I'm not living in Woodlawn, but then finding white spaces to socialize in or have a job in or do other things in. I live, work, eat, breathe here.
Okay. And exactly, because you can understand everybody's skepticism when it comes to the actual Freedmen Bureau. When it comes to the Freedmen Bureau, like let's say that you could get a Freedmen Bureau established like we had back in the 1800s. What's to stop once again? Because when you had the Freedmen Bureau and you had Black people had millions of dollars in the Freedmen Bureau, it ended up getting raided by the federal government. So what's to keep, the federal government or the Chicago or the state government, city government from coming in and once again ripping off Black people, which we've known they've done for years and years and years throughout the time of this country?
I think that is a fantastic question, and I'll interpret hopefully with your permission, the kind of the story of what happened with the Freedmen Bureau a little differently, because to me the bank is the story, and the bank wasn't the government. The bank was white people. So the question is, how do you stop a Freedmen's Bureau on 71st Street, especially if a white guy who's saying he's going to be alderman is talking about it? How do you stop me from you trying to take that over or trying to, do something that's going to cause problems? And this is what we're doing. This is not something I'm saying I'm going to open up for me, or that I'm going to, start on my own and then I'll let other people in. The day that the keys to the Freedmen's Bureau are handed over, it's not going to be my hand that reaches out. And I don't know. I can't predict the future and tell you what Marlon's going to be doing in March. But my heart's desire is that Marlon Watson will be the man who steps in, and that Arthur and Cynthia will help him really to get everything done. And all I'm doing is raising money for that thing. All I'm doing is raising money and making sure there's a door between the Freedmen's Bureau and the ward office, so that when you need something from the local elected official, he's next door literally, and they can open the door and they can walk in. And as far as ownership, I don't think you let the government be a part of this. I don't think you make this a part of the government. You make sure the government is responsive to it, and that's my job. Marlon comes in and says, hey, we're having some trouble about this or that. Freedmen need help from the city council about this or that. And I say, what do you want me to do? And that's my job. As far as how it runs and what it does, I say you keep it private. It has if it's a 501c4, for example, it's all Freedmen board, and the executive director is a Freedman, and you write it into the articles of incorporation. However, you can do it that's legal. Non-Freedmen need not apply. This is for a specific group of people. That's what this is. And this is a model that actually Italian Americans know a little bit about, because when we couldn't go outside, when Italian American men couldn't go outside because of the RICO Act. And my father literally knew people he went to elementary school with who ended up in jail for 10 to 15 years for standing on a street corner and speaking Italian to someone else who happened to be related to someone who had done something they shouldn't have done. That's when they started these Italian American societies that would be men only, and they were completely private because they knew the government couldn't have anything to do with it. And this is, I think, the same kind of thing where you need protection. I will tell you what, we had just a few years ago, and then I'll let you ask your next question. Just a few years ago, we had a gentleman. He was a barber. He was a pillar of the community, a good man, happened to have a handgun, which is legal in Chicago. Had his carry license with him. He was shot and killed by a rookie cop who, when she approached, started to reach for her gun. So he reacted in such a way that as he started to move around, she saw he had a gun. He didn't grab for it. She just saw he had one as he kind of like spun around, and she pulls her gun all the way out.
That's
He's
not
to reach for his.
not to cut you off, Gabe, but that's what I wanted to ask you exactly. How are you guys planning on dealing with because we know in New York, LA, Miami, Atlanta, and a lot of these major cities, as well as these mid-sized cities, these small town Americas as well too, we have so much police brutality going on, especially with black people, especially black men. So how are you going to go about combating that? How will you stand up against this injustice that black men who are getting gunned down daily in this country? What are you going to do to go to bat for that?
Here's my answer. First, I'm going to say that man's name was Haris Snoop Augustus, and he has a little girl now that doesn't have a father in the world. This is what we're going to do. The Chicago Police Department is a criminal enterprise, and the key to unraveling that is going after the Proud Boys in Chicago. The Proud Boys, the fascist organization, is completely enmeshed in the Chicago Police Department. And when you talk about day one or first 30 days or right away, what are you going to do? I'm introducing legislation to outlaw the Proud Boys in Chicago. Chicago has home rule status in Illinois. And home rule status basically means that you're like a little state. You know, there are certain things you don't have control over that the state has control over, and that has a lot to do with how federal funding moves through different municipal bodies. But we have a lot of control when it comes to protecting ourselves. And this has not been used. This has been used as a weapon against black folks. We need to jujitsu it and use it as a weapon against the police and basically say, you know, we're going to have a non-Proud Boy zone on the South Side. Now, I don't know whether or not we're going to be able to push this thing forward to prevent, you know, all over the city things from happening. But there's a point at which what you accomplish in Chicago is about your hood. So there's a point at which I want to help everybody. And you know, Marlon, Arthur, and I have talked about treatment bureaus popping up in every neighborhood and other aldermen following along with what we're doing. However, what I want to make sure of is when a young man, when my son comes to see me in my ward office, and he's a young, beautiful young black man who is, you know, in his early 20s, and he's strong looking, tall, no cops going near him. In my ward, I want people to say, we're not going to mess with them over there like we mess with people in other places. My long-term vision, my broader vision is that doesn't happen anywhere. But today, as I talk to you now, the goal is none of our sons, none of our daughters, none of our, you know, men and women are abused in the ways that they're abused in other parts of the city. And so we start with us and we move out from there. I'll also just briefly say that in addition to the Freedmen's Bureau, you know, Marlon's very interested in having what essentially would be a men's club, a club specifically for men and boys to hang out. And that thing, police aren't going in there for nothing. There'll be that's a private club. Nobody's coming in unless they have a card. It's just going to be, we're going to do the best we can to lock down the areas that we're responsible for. And that's kind of the beginning of it. There's more detail, but I think that gives you a general idea.
Real quick, because we're going to get ready and we're going to start to head to some of these comments in the comment section as well, too. So I just want to ask you this to kind of round this up. What incentives are there for Black-owned businesses in Chicago? Like, how can you guys spur the development of Black-owned businesses, also job creation, and how can you reduce crime in these Black neighborhoods? You know, we have so many drugs and stuff coming from across the border into these Black neighborhoods. So, and I know you by yourself can't do it, but what are some of the things that you and your people can work on in terms of, because we need more Black-owned businesses. We need actual money going to actual Black-owned businesses as well, to not people of color, not minorities and undeserved communities, but actually in the Black community. And also, what can we do for job creation? What can we do for the education? Because a lot of times our kids are lagging behind. So how can we get our kids caught up and make sure that they don't fall behind in the cracks of the system here in the United States?
Okay, it's a lot there. I'm going to focus on education. On economics, and we can go from there to education if we have time. I am a founding member, a founding organizer of the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. That is a financial cooperative that is Freedmen owned and run. And we're bringing a branch of that to the Fifth Ward. That is, we have $4 million in assets. I'm going to make sure that we're getting deposits from the city of Chicago, which currently does not put any money. They put all their money in these legacy, these banks that have a history of involving slavery. And they talk about how they condemn them and whatnot, but when they get their hundreds of billions and billions of dollars from the federal government, from the state, where does that money go? B of A, Chase, all of these, we know the names. I don't need to list them. So we're going to capitalize that credit union such that we're going to have hundreds of millions of dollars to loan to local businesses. In addition to that, we're going to make sure that we get legislation passed or policy put in place by the mayor that disaggregates the data that is used to distribute contracts based on set aside. So right now, just like you were describing, our contracts are set aside by an MBEWBE standard, Minority Business Enterprises, Women Business Enterprises. Damn near everyone but a white man can get a contract that way. And if you're a white man married to somebody who fits into those categories, you can still get your contracts that way. So it really is nothing for nobody. But if we say freedmen first, we want to know how many contracts are freedmen getting? What percentage of this is being reserved for freedmen? And we say freedmen deserve to be a third of all of these contracts, and we fight for that. And I'll fight for that to the end. I will not vote yay on a single bill. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's giving me ice cream for the rest of my life. I will not vote on a single bill until they give us a third of the contracts. And when I say us, I mean wards like the 5th Ward, Freedmen majority wards, and where those contracts will go is into the hands of freedmen first. Finally, we have a strategy to create a closed loop B corporation, benefit corporation, that it will be owned, the shareholders will be all of the residents of the 5th Ward who are living either in South Shore, or there's another small neighborhood called the Pocket. So 95% Black American, or 95% Black, probably 92% or better Black American. Anyone who's a freedman and can show that they're a freedman is going to have a much larger number of shares that are distributed to them from the beginning. And what that's going to do is create a corporation, a local corporation, that is in its charter going to mandate it's only doing work where local people are hired. It's only doing work that local corporations get the contracts for, and the profits from all of that work come back into the community in two forms: dividends, so actual freedmen families are getting money from the stuff getting built, which never, ever, ever happens in Chicago. You don't see a dime. There are multi-$100 million developments happening in the poorest neighborhoods in Chicago, and no one in those neighborhoods sees a penny of that. And none of the jobs go to the people in those neighborhoods. The Obama Center, I live across from the Obama Center. There's, maybe 6-7 Black people of the 100 or more construction workers, and probably none of them live in the city. So those are 3 strategies we're going to use. Education is a different story. Maybe we'll get to that in a minute, because I don't want to just be, monopolizing all of the time.
Okay. Hey, DJ, are you in the space, or are you still doing something? Okay, he may not actually be in the space. Ray, I see you up in the space. What I want to go ahead and do now.
I'm here. Damn microphone don't be wanting to click. What's good?
Yeah, I want you to go ahead and start just reading some comments. Take one comment at a time. We're going to get to the actual questions from the actual people that's leaving comments in the comment section, Gabe. And DJ, just go ahead. Ray, y'all look at the comments and ask him some comments real quick, some questions real quick. And Gabe, respond to the best of your ability. Like I say, you got the people, they actually want to speak to you themselves. So we'll go ahead and let them, whatever they put in the comment section, whatever that, can be answered or whatever, go ahead and answer it.
Hey, Ray, start it off, and I'll follow right behind you. I'm actually walking in the house, just getting off of work. I got y'all.
All right. So the first one I'm seeing, I'm just picking a random question. It says, let me see, I'm gonna pick a good one. So many trolls. I'm sorry, I'm trying to find.
I see one where it said, "What's your plan for the 71st? What's your plan for 71st Street?"
71st Street. Yeah, I just seen that too.
That's a wonderful question. So 71st Street is kind of the main drag of the south end of the ward. It runs right down the part of South Shore. South Shore has, depending on how you look at the community, 2 or 3 main arterial east-west streets, 71st, 75th, and you could say 79th. It depends on who you're talking to, but certainly 71st and 75th. 71st Street is challenged. when I ran in 2019, I did title searches because I was trying to understand what was going on of the whole street, and the story was virtually uniform. 20 years before that, maybe 25 years before that, you could walk to the owner of that property, any property on 71st Street. I could walk to the building owner's address. They were somewhere in the neighborhood within 3 or 4 blocks of the property. And then about 15 to 20 years ago, it started to be someone from Winnetka, which is a suburb of Chicago, or someone from Willow Spring. It was people from outside, most likely white, outside of the city, started taking over the properties. In some cases, it was a foreclosure. In some cases, it was a sale, but for short money. And then about 5 to 10 years ago, it started being national and international owners, mostly national, but there are 1 or 2 that look like they might be European to me. Basically, it's all land bank. People are holding on to this until the neighborhood changes over, and then they're going to make money, or they're holding on to it and they're putting pressure on the alderman to help make that moment happen. We need those people. For the most part, those are people who do not have good faith intentions for our communities. We need those people to go. They can sell their properties. Some of them may act right and start renting out to local Black businesses when they see that we mean business. But I'm going to assume almost all of them are not going to do that. We have a couple ways of taking care of that. The aldermen have tremendous powers in terms of what we can do around real estate that range from building inspections to eminent domain. And I think in my vision is every building on 71st Street is put to productive use either because the owners play ball or because we take the property away from the owners. And I'm talking about a 6-month window of time. We get sworn in sometime around May, June. I'm telling you, by 2024, if you don't have a plan that we're satisfied with, that we're going into an eminent domain process. And the way we'll do that is we're going to turn the whole street into a kind of planned development, which is basically you get permission from the city to use extraordinary powers to pursue your development vision. And our development vision is to activate every single storefront. Now, there's a lot to this. So just imagine.
Gabe, real quick. Not to cut you off. I'm sorry to cut you off. I'm going to say it's a lot of questions, so we want to try to get to as many as possible. So if I don't want to.
Okay, I'll be more brief. I understand there's a lot to it. So 71st Street, more local control, turn the holidays into make it a destination so people come and shop because that's when people make their money in retail. And basically you've got to also deal with the crime. Someone's going to ask about crime, and so I'll deal with that in a minute. But imagine that that's handled. The other stuff is going to start to work, but you make it as local as possible, and you really make sure those holidays pop so people know to come to South Shore during the Christmas shopping season and the other holidays around that time.
All right. Let's go to the next question. It says, ask him why Chicago has not heard of him until now. By the way, I'm from Chicago, so King Lion Crown wants to know. He had actually a double question. He wants to know, ask him why Chicago has not heard of him until now. And by the way, I'm from Chicago. And how do we know that you're not another Joe Biden, basically?
Okay, so I'm sure there are some people who don't know me. But that if he doesn't know me and concludes that therefore no one knows me, that means he doesn't know Marlon, he doesn't know Arthur, he doesn't know Cynthia, he doesn't know Beauty Turner. And if he doesn't know who Beauty Turner is, he should Google her. He doesn't know Mark King Carter. He doesn't know there are a number of people who are working with me or who have worked with me historically. He doesn't know Cecilia Butler. I mean, there are very well-known Chicagoans, Southside Chicagoans who I have worked with over the years. And I'm not trying to be famous, but I am trying to be effective. So I think if he searched any of those names, he would see that those are people who have done important things in their communities, and I've been a part of that. I was the editor of the oldest community newspaper in the city of Chicago, one of the oldest in the country, for 8 years. It's kind of hard not to, literally, you can just Google Hyde Park Herald Gabriel Piemonte, and there are more pages than you have time to look at talking about what I've been involved in. I ran for alderman in 2019. I was endorsed by both of the dailies and all of the local papers. So I'm not unknown. That's not an issue. And I'm not a Joe Biden because you got to look at my team. I defy anyone to try to trick or pull the wool over the eyes of Arthur Ward, Arthur Watson, or Cynthia McDonald. That's not going to happen. And those are just the people you see here. there are other freedmen working with me who, similarly are very strong people, and it's just very unlikely. Now, in the end, there is a trust issue, and I'm going to acknowledge that. I'm going to be transparent about that.
That's another thing he wants to know. How can he,
know,
not to cut you off? He wants to know.
that.
He wants to know how. Real quick, Gabe. He wants to know how can we trust you?
And I think that's fair. What I will say is, there are more Black elected officials in the city of Chicago and in the county of Cook than anywhere else in the country. And we have staggering poverty rates for freedmen, staggering incarceration rates. We have an outflow of Black folks from Chicago that has been called the reverse Great Migration. It's so large. And so I think what we need in the city of Chicago is discernment beyond the stuff that we've relied on in the past. And so I would say I understand why he and other people don't trust me. I don't trust white people. So it's a question of how, he and I and he and anyone kind of get to know each other and use that discernment to determine whether or not I'm for real. I've been doing this work for 24 years. There are many, many people who can tell you the positive impact that I've made, in their lives. But again, at some level, it becomes a question of, okay, I've learned a bunch about this guy. What does my gut tell me? And, I can't say anything beyond, I hope that we get to that point, that he and I get to that point.
All right. Let me go ahead to the next one. BW says, who runs the Freedom Credit Union? Asking the question, who runs the Freedom Credit Union?
So it's the credit union. If they're asking about our credit union, it's the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. It's Greg Brown is the president and CEO. It's owned by the members. So freedmen run it. Greg is a freedman. The board is majority freedman. That's sort of the technical answer. I don't know if that satisfies the question.
Okay, Ray, DJ, y'all had something because we just trying to go ahead and hit these comments. So you want to add something?
Like I said, I'm here now, fully aware of everything. What's going on, Rome? How you doing, Gabe? What's good, Ray? Newstoter.
Hey, how you doing?
Everything's good. Respect. So, just for a question right here, one dude, and this is a troll question in my opinion, but we neutral to the situation. Jonathan Green, Ugly World, aka Ugly World, you want to gentrify a historically Black street in a historically Black city. Chicago's not historically Black, and y'all are really giving him a lot of rope, but okay. So just to answer that question, you ain't even got to answer that, Gabe. Chicago's not historically Black. It became Black later on after Reconstruction, so that's not even an answer right there. So y'all got to do a little better with these questions if you really want to be serious about what is Gabe's position. You see what I'm saying? Don't come in here with the troll. We're not letting anybody up here. If you want to ask a question, do it in the comments respectfully. So, let's go back up here. Shatter Space, shout out to Sister Mel, you already know. So, Max Fennell, what paperwork do people have to provide to show they are freedmen? What about the Black Americans who have paperwork that says Negro, who are all these freedmen, and Negro has a longer precedent? So I'm from New Jersey, born and raised. In 1970, New Jersey decided to take race or ethnicity of any kind off your birth certificates. So mine don't say anything. It just say I'm born in Beth Israel Hospital. That's it. But there are some folks that are older than me that are from New Jersey that don't even have Negro or freedman or anything on their birth certificate, and they identify as Black. So maybe you can answer that one, Gabe.
I'll speak to it, but this is definitely beyond my area of expertise. And I want to reiterate that my position on reparations is largely one that I have been schooled in. I don't presume to know anything more than anyone else in this space. But I will say that there is a kind of consensus among many scholars and activists in the movement, in the national movement, that it is feasible for freedmen to be able to establish their identity as such through a number of different methods. And, I don't want to get too far into it. I know, definitely from Here to Equality talks a little bit about this, and there are other articles from, experts that talk about how people can establish their identity. But it's kind of a fundamental question. If it's not possible, then it makes lineal reparations not make sense. And I'll just say, based on the evidence I've seen and what I've heard from experts, it is possible. And in fact, it's extremely possible some of the best records that people take in America is on property, on things that are valuable. And for a very long time, the most valuable property that white people had, in their point of view, was black folks. And so there is actually a pretty meticulous record in that sense. And then there's just a lot of data that goes beyond just birth certificates. It's complex. Genealogy is complex. As an Italian American, I can tell you, people trying to establish their genealogy in Italy face a lot of kind of similar problems, that there's this interruption or that interruption, and it doesn't seem like you can piece it together. And yet it happens a lot. Genealogists do pretty amazing things. It's a pretty impressive science.
Real quick, y'all, Ray and DJ, try to go in chronological order so we can go ahead. We want to try to get as many people as possible. We might not be able to get to all the comments. Let's go in chronological order. And also just go ahead and read the question to Gabe. Let Gabe go ahead. The people want to ask him the question. So let's just go ahead and go in chronological order. Give him the question. Let him shoot. Gabe, I know I know you we're going to try to go ahead and go as quick as possible. We want to answer as many questions as possible.
Yes, sir. I'll get faster.
So we want to hit everybody's question up in the comment section that we can. So people asking questions, like I say, this space here, we're not endorsing Gabe. We're holding the space right here. We are this is a news type space here. So we do current events as well too. So Gabe is in the space. We want to go ahead and allow him to go ahead and share his platform with the people. Some people may be fans of him. Some people may not be fans, of course, we know. So go ahead, and the people that's not even fans, go ahead and let them get their questions in, answer their questions as fast as we can. We're going to try to keep this thing humming.
All right.
Yeah, apologies. I'm with you with him 100%. Understand, but there's a lot of troll questions up here, so I'm just
yeah. If it's a troll, if it's a blatant troll, and even Gabe might even want to answer some of the troll questions as well too. But if it's a blatant troll, where it's just talking about nonsense, you got to go ahead and skip over. But if it's an actual legitimate question or whatever, or something like that, let's go ahead and try to get to it and address it as much as possible, because I know it's a lot of questions. So we're going to, and I know Gabe, I don't know how long his schedule is tonight, so we want to try to hit up as many as we can while the space is going.
Okay, one right here, YSM Yolanda. Eminent domain typically refers to black business owners and using the law to screw our people. There are black building owners in the 5th Ward as well.
Yeah, that's right, and we wouldn't use it on them. We're freedmen first. So what I'm saying is, the many owners of 71st Street businesses, and let me repeat, I've done the research. The majority of the properties on 71st Street aren't black owned anymore. They're owned by national corporations, a lot of them in California and the East Coast. That's who I'm targeting. But we're not, there's no agenda underneath the agenda. We're moving forward, and I say me and the freedmen I'm working with are moving forward to center freedmen in terms of solutions. There's no tricks here.
Sure on that one. Hold on 1 second. Go back here. Let's go back. All right. Let's see. Okay, so shout out to the Hard Black Truth. Go support that brother's podcast on the Screw too. Ask him what is his thoughts for ending the qualified immunity of the police.
Got to do it. 100%. Got to do it. Got to end qualified immunity.
I'm not all the way versed in law, as far as how that goes.
Okay, sorry. Okay.
Just like, 60-second clarification on it, you know what I mean?
Yeah. We introduced an ordinance. Again, City of Chicago has home rule. So we have extraordinary powers, especially in terms of police protection and, basic infrastructure. We passed a law that says that individual police officers cannot be shielded from their actions through special or qualified immunity.
Right, that is true. And
real quick,
do you believe these police officers need to get their own insurance too on top of that?
That's not my problem. If they go bankrupt, that's not my problem.
Right.
Gabe,
I'm not being sarcastic. I want it to be something that they are afraid of, because what I want is not for them to go out and get a policy. I want them to retire or stop harming people. That's what the issue is about. Not about, well, now what do they do? What if they lose their house? I suppose maybe you should stop beating people to death or shooting people. Or sexually assaulting people. I mean, it's real bad here. It's a war zone. The vast majority of police encounters are horrific for black folks in the neighborhoods of the 5th Ward. And so I want them afraid. I'll just be honest. I want them afraid to do harm to people. I don't want them afraid in general.
Gabe, real quick, somebody asked this question right here. Integrity says, let me see real quick. No, it was actually looks like just LaShawn. She says, Gabe, why would you speak on reparations locally if you said you only support federal reparations?
Good question. So federal reparations is the framework. So we're talking about applying the framework locally. I'll give you an example real quick. What you can see as harm, quantifiable harm that requires redress locally is housing. We have systematically discriminated against freedmen in terms of housing in the city, both the city government itself and private organizations. We can quantify that. Many people alive today have been harmed in a way that can be quantified by housing policy in Chicago. So you take the reparative frame, you take reparations as a concept, and you say, this is what we're doing down here. But what we're not going to do is call it reparations for a number of reasons. But one very important one is I refuse to be part of something that happens locally that people later can say, we don't need federal reparations. Chicago already gave them reparations. That's what people have to watch out for. These local reparations things, it's a con. They're going to pull you into something up in Evanston. They're giving people 20 grand and telling them they just got reparations, and they never see the money. The money goes to a white organization that gives it out to contractors they pick, and they're calling it reparation. We're not going to let that happen in Chicago. We're going to do a different model. It's reparative justice.
Gabe, I want to ask you. I want to ask you this. I want to ask you this real quick. Barron says, could you ask him, when you say freedmen, are you excluding other Black people on purpose or accident?
This is what I'm saying. I believe many people have a right to redress. Many people have a right to petition municipal, state, federal government for horrible things that have been done to them. My focus is on a specific group of lineal descent, because these are the people, this is the foundational crime. This is the crime that precedes all other crimes. This is the crime that is the cause of the other crimes. So we can't fix problems for other people until we face our past. And we don't face our past until we come to terms with the ultimate debt that is owed in this country, and it is owed to freedmen. I don't mean to exclude anybody, and I do not mean to suggest that other people do not have a legitimate claim. They do. This claim has to be addressed first, or you're never going to get yours met if you're not a freedman.
All right. All right. We trying to just hit up some of these questions and stuff as well, too. Let's scroll down. Somebody wants to know who in the Fifth Ward calls themselves freedmen.
Who? Arthur, Marlon, Cynthia. You want to list the names? They're freedmen. There are leaders in the national movement that live in the Fifth Ward.
Okay.
Do you want them to raise their hands? They're in this room.
You also had an individual says, why does Gabe feel that he has a right to tell us which level of reparations we should get? A house guest is a house guest. They don't get to tell us what to do.
I don't. I'm doing what I'm told. I don't think I have a right. I'm doing what I'm told.
All right. I want to get the Black Native. She has a question. She says, what was the outcome of the Mandela project that you were involved in Boston, Massachusetts, Roxbury community?
You took my question.
Oh, my bad.
I'm gonna be real.
My bad.
I'm gonna be real quick about this. It was very successful in terms of how it was organized. And at the 11th hour, at the last minute, the city extended the area that people could vote in over the issue. So when it was just the Black neighborhoods in Boston that were going to vote on whether or not they should essentially secede, that's what it is, incorporate on their own, then it looked like it was going to overwhelmingly pass. At the last minute, they expanded the scope of people who could vote to include all the white people in Boston, and it was defeated.
All right.
That's what happened. There's actually a young man in Boston who's thinking about running for city council, who I'm in conversation with, who's considering reintroducing this as an idea.
She also asked, are you still an editor and writing coach, and why are you so interested in reparations and not other issues that Black Americans face?
I don't think there's any more important issue in America for anybody than reparations. I don't think there's another thing that we should be concentrating on. I think everything else we're trying to do fails because we don't face our past. And that's something I believe in deeply, even in my own personal ethnicity. I work closely with indigenous people as well. on removing Columbus statues and changing all of these Columbus honorifics because I believe that it's a lie that Christopher Columbus was a great man. And I believe it's the same kind of problem on a smaller scale. So what I believe is that if you don't look at your past and come to terms with it, you don't solve your problems. And America is fundamentally an economic enterprise. And the basic problem we have in this country, literally, if you ask me, what am I going to do about school shootings? I'm going to say reparations. And I'm not being sarcastic. The problem is a lack of empathy. If you want to stop the planet from burning, reparations. Why? We can't care about the planet till we care about each other. And we're not going to do that until we understand that all people are equal. And Americans and America will not change its mind until America changes its money. And the only way that's going to happen is if we come to terms with the debt that we owe that is to the fundamental crime of the country. I don't think there is a more important issue to be dealing with. I really don't.
All right. DJ Ray, y'all got a question lined up? I see y'all got your hands up.
Yeah, I'm gonna ask.
Yeah, hold on. I'll respond to these controlling comments too. So hold on 1 second, just to scroll back down because it's over 100 in him, and more than 75 is obviously troll gang. So let's see. Sagittarius tendencies.
That's what
How will they guarantee that the Freedmen's Bureaus won't be another scam like what happened in my home of Mississippi, especially with the people he's connected to and the constant disrespect? So I'm not sure what the disrespect thing is about, but you could go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, I don't. I hope I'm not disrespecting people, and I deeply apologize if I do. But all I can do is make my own assessment of people I meet individually, and the people I'm working with are people of the highest standard of integrity. And I believe in my communities, and I believe good people are going to gather and be excited by this idea and invest in the Bureau. In the end, the Bureau will be Freedmen run and Freedmen owned. And so the question then becomes, can I trust Freedmen to run a Freedmen Bureau? And that's something that I really feel is not my place. All I can do, I try to be around honest people, good people, hardworking people. And that's who are around me right now. And they're Freedmen. And they're going to get this project and they're going to do what they do with it. And I'm going to do my best to raise money and deliver legislatively for them. And I think it's going to be not only legit, but it's going to be a model for the rest of the country. I believe in it.
You got it, Ray.
I don't know how you make sure it doesn't go wrong. I don't know how you do that.
You got it, Ray.
Come here and participate. Come to Chicago. Be a part of it if you're worried it's going to fail.
Right. Well, y'all heard that firsthand. Y'all feel like, y'all want to be a part of the Freedmen. Gabe just gave you guys an invite. So there you go. So just to continue on with that same question, Gabe.
Real quick, Ray. Real quick, DJ. Look like Ray had a question he wanted to ask him.
Okay, go ahead, Ray. Well, hey, Ray, just let me ask this question. You could do a double one because it go hand in hand with the last question. Will the Freedmen Bureaus have full? And this is the company. Will the Freedmen's Bureaus have full autonomy over private investigations involving crimes committed against our people?
Yes. To the best of my ability, within my powers to make that happen. Yes.
All right, Ray. Ray, go ahead.
So this question, this is from someone anonymous, and they wanted me to ask who is telling him these things that only freedmen are the only ones entitled to reparations and not black descendants of chattel slavery.
Yeah, I understand where that's going, and I'm just going to say that I feel like I'm connected to a pretty substantial community of leaders in the reparationist movement, and this is the designation they're using. It's an important designation because it has a history and a context legally. So this is a designation that can be used to achieve protected class status. It can be used as a political status. You can't go into the census and say, I want, my club, people in my club to be a census category, and you count people. They want specific categories. OMB wants specific categories. When you try to make laws, there's a reason you hear Hispanic, even though that includes people from Spain. And the truth is, we don't worry about set-asides for people from Spain, but it's in the case law. So they still talk about Hispanic set-asides and Hispanic census counts. if you work with the language that's in the case law that on the federal level and in policy, then you're able to achieve more. And that's, to my understanding, why freedman is the designation. I do not mean to disrespect anybody or exclude anybody. I'm working with a group that I think are some pretty good people trying to do good things for millions and millions of Black Americans. Maybe I'm making a mistake. I'll find out, but I'm going to keep going.
Hey, I'm not sure if I'm in the matrix or not. I can't even hear Ray. Hey, Tyler, drop me.
All right, I'll go ahead and drop you real quick and bring you back up. Ray, you had another question that you had a double question that you was going to ask him there.
No, I didn't have a double question. I'm going through the comments trying to find a question.
Okay, let me go back in there myself. Somebody asked a question. They felt like you were excluding. Somebody asked a question. They felt like you were excluding Pan-Africans out of the actual reparations conversation as well, too.
Like people who aren't descendants of enslaved Black American citizens. I suppose that's the case, but not disrespectfully. And it's kind of the point, the thing I had said earlier, that I think we can't help anybody until we deal with the problem of centuries of excluding one particular group. It's in the DNA of the American economy, political society, and culture. And until we confront this and have an economic solution to it that is commensurate to the scope of the problem, we can't help anybody. So trying to cut in line, historically, everyone has tried to cut in line in front of the freedom and have pretty much always succeeded. And yet we still have problem after problem after problem. And the reason we have those problems is that this is the issue that has to be resolved first. That's my read, and maybe I'm mistaken, but I think I'm not alone. But honestly, I don't disrespect or disregard other people's challenges and the redress that they deserve. I think America has a lot of answering to do for a lot of horrific crimes against a lot of people. It is my belief that this is the how do I say it? It's the foundation, it's the cornerstone, but it's a rotten cornerstone.
Okay, Davey wants to know how many of your constituents have you spoken to about what do you say? How many of your constituents have you spoken with about freeman status?
We've had I think 5 forums now. They've all been live streamed, hundreds of viewers, probably seated in these forums. Altogether, maybe 400 or 500 people. I always talk about reparations. I always talk about freedmen. I will sometimes switch between freedmen and Black American, but I'm very specific about both of those terms, referring to the descendants of enslaved Black American citizens. I have people from the community in these spaces, not as many as the total, but I do have people, so they're hearing. And when I've done local things, I do Facebook, those little kind of live Facebook stories. I get hundreds of people watching those, and this is what I'm talking about. So I don't know what the number is, but it's in the thousands. And there's only about 13,000 people who vote.
This gentleman also said, Davey also wants to tell us about a time where you personally benefited from the white supremacy system.
I benefit every day. I benefit every single day. What's a specific example of that? When I got COVID during the height of the pandemic, and I was in bed. I was sick for 6 weeks. I couldn't get out of bed. It took me 2 months after that to be able to walk without a cane. I couldn't work for more than 3 or 4 hours a day, even when I was so-called better. And my landlord waited for us to be able to get our finances together. I don't think everyone gets that. I don't think if my neighbor had been out of work, and I'm basically a freelancer, I work for myself, so I had no money for months. I don't think if another person in this building had said, "Oh, I can't give you money, I'm sick," for months, that they would have been afforded the same courtesy. I don't know that for a fact, but that's how white supremacy works. You don't know it. Nobody says, "Well, you're white, so I'll take care of you," but that's what happens. I probably got my job at the Herald because I was white. I'm sure there were other people who were qualified who weren't. And I think it happens, every single day. When we say a debt is owed, when I say there's only federal reparations, I mean that's a specific thing. But I know that a debt is owed by every white person to freedmen every single day in this country, because every day we're stealing. Every day.
Someone wants to know why you blocked over half of Black Twitter.
That's a big number. I blocked a whole bunch of people who, if you're going to be directly insulting to me, your access to me on Twitter is at my discretion, just like your access is, my access to you is at your discretion. When we started having these conversations, after Marcel graciously hosted me for that 3-hour conversation, people just didn't say, I'm skeptical, I want to talk to you, I have some questions. People started, straight up insulting me, talking about my family, talking about my appearance. I have no obligation to let you treat me like that. And I'm sorry if some people think that's not how I should do Twitter. Here's the bottom line. I'm running for office. I'm doing these spaces because I really do want to engage the community. But I literally do not have the time for people who want to have a back and forth with me. There are so many people who want to have these kind of aggressive and a little bit insulting back and forths with me. And I don't have that much time in the day. But there are other people who do want to engage me on Twitter for reasons that are more directly related to the work I'm trying to do right now. When we're all done with this, I promise you, I'm unblocking everybody. Everybody, I promise you. And we can all hash this out. But we literally don't have the bandwidth right now to deal with the totality of conversation about the campaign on Twitter and what people think about me and what I'm trying to do.
Double Gemini wants to know, how is the term freeman the same? What is? Let me go back to this comment real quick. Let me see if I can get back.
Hey, News, why are you doing that? I see a lot of people like sending me DMs, all this other stuff, accusing us of cooning, this, that, and the third. To be honest, I don't know this guy, Gabe, but if you have a question you want to ask him and it's legit, go ahead and ask. I don't mind asking him anything, but I need just be legit questions.
Hey, at the end of the day, Ray, some of our people you already know. You know what I mean? They ain't got shit better to do with their life. You know what I'm saying? So let it slide. You know what I mean?
Somebody was saying.
Yeah, I'm sorry, but you see, we get these nasty grams of people talking crazy to us. We're trying to give this man a chance to talk.
Pretty much.
Well, not only that, but we answering the questions or whatever. So, people want to come up here and they want to go ahead and just pretty much have all hell break loose instead of actually having, because you can't have an actual dialogue on here. So, we going ahead and we actually, the questions they're leaving, the ones that we can respond to, we go ahead and responding as much as we can. So, you got over 168 comments in the actual comments section as well too. So we're trying to get to him as fast as we can. He's speaking as well too, so it's not like it's just a one answer question, yes, no, and he's going on and on and on. So he's trying to explain. We're reading the questions, we're trying to find the questions, read the questions back to him. But in the end, people gonna pretty much whine and complain about anything anyways, unless you go with they point of view on anything like that. So that's not surprising at all.
And just to add on that, half of these people in the room tonight don't even come to our spaces, so ain't no need to threat on that.
Real talk. Let's go ahead and get another question lined up for him as well too. Let's go ahead and try to keep these questions coming. Like I say, I just was in the actual comments. I had one. Somebody was trying to say, is freeman the same as Hispanic or something like that?
No, that's not I understand the question. I wasn't saying that these are the same. What I was saying is that there's language embedded in policy and federal policy and law and rules and regulations that people choose to continue to use that language because there's it has a history within and this is just I'm just talking about kind of why people have particular word choices. I'll tell you, there are experts on this that can really go deep into the history of freedmen and why it's really a useful term if you're trying to make policy, and especially if you're trying to have protected status or set aside for contracts and stuff. Remember, if we use African, you've seen, if you try to make things for African Americans in this country, it gets shot down. And a lot of people make the argument that therefore you can't do anything for a specific ethnic group. And yet we see other groups getting stuff all the time. And the argument they make is that African American is a race. You can't have race-based policy. But you can have lineal policy. And so Friedman is a lineage, and that's the distinction.
All right. Y'all got a question y'all want to ask him real quick too while we going up and down the actual comment section, trying to find something to ask him?
Yeah, I'm looking too. So
Just LaShawn says an alderman cannot make a promise.
I don't know what that means.
I think they're talking about the promise of what you're saying, what you were going to do with the 71st Street. I think that was, or maybe even surrounding reparations.
Well, if it's about 71st Street, we sure can. That's aldermen are all about. Real estate in Chicago is basically organized. How policy around real estate is made in Chicago is organized in such a way to make sure that every alderman can get paid. It's a system, and they're trying to reform the system, but the roots of the system is to make it as possible, as likely as possible that anyone can give you a bribe to get something done. So you can't put, if you want to put a sign up in front of, so you get a business license, you got to talk to the alderman. You get your store started up and you need a bunch of other licenses, you talk to the alderman. You think you're all done and you're ready to put up a sign? Guess who has to give you permission to put up the sign? Every step of the way, the alderman controls the built environment. And so, actually, we can't do all that. Alderman can take property. Alderman can distribute property.
Hey,
we're giving away. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off, but you had a question. That's from. Fine. Okay, well, because this person here, I see they actually got a profile. You talk about why is a cult leader like Gertrude Lyons giving money to your campaign? I don't know who Gertrude Lyons is.
Yeah, so this is something that's floating around on Twitter. People want to disparage Gertrude, and that's fine. She's not a cult leader. She's a therapist. She and her husband are philanthropists. They distribute a lot of money to try to do good. And, somebody figured out how to look up people's donations. And I think that's great. People should be informed. But bring some evidence if you think this is a bad person. And if the complaint is that white people shouldn't bring resources into the Black community, we need to have a discussion because we really are strapped. The alternative is that somehow, the community has to pool those resources to get to get things done. So when we can leverage other people's, resources, then that really makes it a big difference. And a good example of that is that church I was talking about earlier, that 95% of that money was from white people, and it went into the pockets of Black families. And so, people want to say, don't do that, and I don't understand it. That was a clean project. The credit union is a clean project. I do clean work. You can go through all of my history and you can look up everything I've done. And it's squeaky clean because I'm not here about that. I'm not a rich guy. I ran. My wife and I ran. And we ran at 65th and Stony. And anybody who lives in Chicago knows where that is. We are not living high off the hog.
Okay. I think Enough had a question. She said, how can you say you don't trust white people, but basically you want Black people to trust you? I guess with you being white as well, too.
Yeah, I think you should trust people on a case-by-case basis and use your discernment. In general, my experience has been that white people aren't trustworthy. And there are exceptions. And I know, I probably know 70, 75 white people who I would say are trustworthy enough that if I had a discussion with them, I believe what they're telling me. But, I've used my discernment. And in my experience, the vast majority aren't.
Go ahead, DJ.
Hold on 1 second. I got to scroll back down. This thing just be losing chat. Hold on 1 second.
Those questions are piling up, man. Those comments. It's like
more than 100 of them or half of them, or whatever.
We're coming up on 200. I got 192 on my screen here.
Yeah. Hold on 1 second. Okay, hold on, wait. That's it. No.
I appreciate you guys sorting through all these. Thank you.
No, it's okay. We appreciate you for coming up. You know what I mean? Everybody go on Newstoter.com. If you can't get in the room, go on Newstoter on YouTube. You can voice your opinion over there too as well. Okay, I'm in everywhere, which is my little stuff. Which is my stuff.
Somebody asked, what exactly would be the operations of your proposed Freeman Bureau be?
So I think if we were going to go into real specific detail, I would ask that you guys allow me to invite Marlon, if he's still in the room, and I don't know if Arthur would want to speak to it a little bit too, but my side of it is basically to be a legislative liaison in a sense that if the Bureau needs things done in City Hall, that's my job, and then to also help facilitate any real estate related work that's being done. The Bureau will right away have capacity for genealogical research. We have vacant lots we've identified in the ward that are city owned, that were owned originally by freedmen, that we're going to return, not to those freedmen, but to some freedmen. And you'll just have to establish your lineage. So we have 70 lots. That's not, that's a fraction of, there are thousands and thousands of freedmen in the ward, but it'll probably incentivize people because we'll say all you have to do is establish standing in the community and your status as a freedman. And I think what that'll do is kind of prime the pump, so to speak. So we'll get lots of people in, and programs like that, programs that are focused on and lobbying, of course, for the federal, lobbying education around the federal reparations program.
Real quick, Gabe, Stephen Hunter Johnson said that you want to take land away from Black people.
Prove it. I don't. And no, I've never said it. Because people are just going to,
I'm just going to read the questions I'm seeing. So people are asking, how do we know he's not just another grifter or another Joe Biden in the skies?
Fair. 24 years I've lived on the south side of Chicago. I started doing work in economic justice for Black folks 22 years ago. So either I've been building up to this grift for 22 years or, there's something to it.
Yeah, so this is, hold up a minute, 1 second. Need Tran, I guess that's it, train or whatever, Tran, I don't know. The question is, though, I'm wondering what policies he's against that are being taken up by the Chicago City Council right now. Where are a few he supports? So what policies you do support? And she has a double question, I guess. Mm-hmm. What policies that the board or the council may have already voted on, or whatever the case be, and as you will be maybe getting elected and you're coming in, what items would you have to go against with them that they might have to vote on collectively, obviously. So just to ask a question, I know there's a double one. I'm wondering what policies he's against that are being taken up by the Chicago City Council right now. Where are the few he supports and don't support? I guess we could leave it at that.
Okay, that sounds good. So I'll say just generally that I can't imagine voting for a budget that looks anything like the budget that this city council has been passing for as long as I've been in the city. I'm not voting for a multi-billion-dollar police budget when I see what police do in our community. So the budget is the first thing. The next thing, what I support, is something called treatment, not trauma. And it's the idea that we, instead, when you call 911, the solution is always the police in Chicago. So you have a mental health crisis, other issues, you get cops no matter what, often with deadly results. Treatment, not trauma, directs the appropriate kind of professional to the appropriate situation. And it also diverts funds based on that. I'm opposed to police officers in public schools, and that's something that the city council has supported. And so that's something that I would oppose. And there's a policy, and I don't know if this is a law or if the mayor just instituted it. I don't, to tell you the truth, recall what the specifics of it was. But after Thursday through Sunday, after a certain hour, kids aren't really allowed in Millennium Park, which is kind of the big downtown park. And really who they're targeting are black kids. And that's because there was a fight one day and there was a shooting and there was some problems over the summer. And I'm opposed to that.
For sure. Hold on a second. I had another question for you. Hold on a second. I'll ask for you person that's asking this question in Newstoter's DM, but give me a second on that. Okay. That's not her. Well, I think you asked that question already right here about. Gabe, I don't know you personally, but I have heard of you for over several years. I know you're in the political space, and I know you do advocate for reparations for Black Americans who descend from chattel slavery or were freedmen prior to the 1870 census. So Gabe is not new. Y'all just new to the program on that note, so we could get over that. See how you gonna prove say he's not. There's a lot of troll comments, man. See, stop saying much. Step up. Why can't we find someone black? Because black people don't want to step up. It's just that simple. You know what I mean?
I tried. I called 5 of my neighbors and asked them to run, and I told them I'd give them money and I supported them. One of the things I do for money is communications for campaigns, and I offered them that, and I offered to raise money for them, and they all said no.
Right. And I've been asked that too.
Hey,
you know
real quick.
Black people that, I'm not running for no office because that's not my thing. No matter how eloquently you speak or no politics, that's not my thing. You know what I mean?
Real quick.
Yeah,
oh shoot, I'm trying to find that comment. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
No. Go ahead. Well, Ray, you got something. I'm losing comments too because people just.
It says It says, was Gabriel an advisor to the National Reparations League March on Washington? And if so, what were his qualifications to be an advisor?
Oh, do you mean the thing that's coming up for Juneteenth, or the thing that happened last fall?
He said this is the National Reparations League March on Washington. So
if it's one of the marches that happened in the fall, because I've heard some rumors that I was involved in that. I was not. There's one coming up that I've been asked to recruit white people in the Midwest, and that's the extent. I'm not in charge of anything except getting some white people on a bus. It's a pretty minor role. That's Juneteenth.
Correct.
So I don't know if that's the one, but it is in Washington, so maybe that's.
Yes, that's the reparations2023.com, reparations2023.com, reparations2023.com. So a lot of folks see your name up there on the the directors list, and so Gabe is a regional director. So if you live out in the Midwest, Chicago, somewhere in that upper Midwest, you could call Gabe and get on a bus. He'll help you, direct you. If you need a bus ticket, hotel ticket, directions getting there, whatever the case be. So we gotta kind of chill out with the race-based thing, because at the end of the day, you know what I mean. Even John Brown sacrificed himself and his children to help Black Americans, people in the North, even though I'll call Jim Crow, the North Jersey, Jim Crow Joe of the North, you know what I mean? It's white folks up here that don't help us, Italian, Polish, Irish. Let's be logical about that, y'all. Some of y'all just kind of getting here and just don't really have a clue of what's going on. Y'all, some of y'all really do need to pick up a book on some real. So I got an anonymous question here. Somebody hit me in a DM. So for Gabe, if you win the office, what do you see as your biggest obstacle in getting any of the work you're talking about done?
I think that's a great question. As much as possible, we've tried to come up with strategies that keep it local, so it's stuff that we're in charge of. But to the extent that we're going to need support from the whole city council, we're going to have problems. So the city council is the simple answer. But for example, we want an eviction moratorium. I can use my influence as an alderman to stop local evictions by intervening with landlords who do not want problems with the alderman, because you can really make a property owner's life hell as an alderman. And so we just will negotiate a different way from throwing people out. But when I go to City Hall and say we got to reinstitute the eviction moratorium we had at the height of the pandemic, a lot of people aren't going to like that. A lot of money comes from landlords and developers in Chicago for politicians. So it'll be City Council.
Did you read this question already, DJ? It says, why didn't he throw his support behind a Black American that had the same intentions and plans he does?
Right. I saw that. I skipped over it. But hold up, before you even answer that, I saw that and skipped over it again. So that's back to the question. We know who in Chicago is running that's Black. Why can't we find a Black person? Because our people don't want to do it. Just that simple.
Well, let him actually answer that too, though, because Gabe.
I got a couple of,
before Gabe, I'm not answering for Gabe. I'm just context purposes. Go ahead, Gabe.
Yeah, I have a couple of ways of answering that. One, as I mentioned before, I reached out to people. Here's the thing: the people with the resources to do this, people are concerned about the people who are donating to me. You need people with wealth to support you to run, and the people who you would really want, the people who have really lived the experience of being a freedman in Chicago in an authentic way, sometimes are challenged to get access to those resources because this is a segregated city and people do not want to support regular folks who are running. When I reached out to those people, when I made that list, I reached out to middle-class people. And what you find is that they're reluctant. They're reluctant when there's someone to really stand up against. Now, I'll tell you something else. When I ran last time, just at the last minute, a young man jumped in, Will Calloway. You can Google Will Calloway. It was the two of us running against Leslie Hairston. It was too late for me to turn around at that point. I was committed. I was on the ballot. He jumped in. I had raised money. We worked as closely together as we could as opponents, and then he beat me into the runoff by 250 votes, and I immediately joined his team. And I walked around, knocked on doors, and convinced especially the white people who had voted for me that this was their new candidate. And I got a lot of people who wouldn't have otherwise voted for Will Calloway to vote for him. And he came within a hair's breadth of becoming alderman. I worked very closely with him. I crafted policy with him. I was with him on the phone every day. I knocked on doors every day. So when a Black man had the courage to run and wanted to have this position, I did everything I could, even when he had run against me. Even when he had shown up at the last minute in the election, I said, okay, well, now it's him in the sitting alderman. I'm going to make sure he wins. And I did my best to do it. So I did everything I could to do the thing that I understand a lot of people wish was happening here, which is to have a freedman running in this situation. There aren't any. Every other person running has nothing prioritizing Black Americans, let alone lineage-based specificity, which is Black Americans generally, in their platforms. So we reached the question, we're at the point where we reached the question, would you rather have a Black person who doesn't have policies for Black folks as alderman, or would you rather have a white person who does have those policies and does have a team of freedmen working with them? And that's a question of preference. And I can't, I'm not going to speak beyond that, because I understand that some people are saying, well, I'd rather have that, that Black representative. But at the end of the day, that's your choice,
Real quick, let me say this, because Marlon, I see you requesting, and like I said in the actual DM, right now I know you're his campaign manager. I know you're Gabe's campaign manager, but we haven't had any speakers come up here tonight. So it would be unfair if we actually let you come up here, brother. So we're just letting Gabe go ahead and speak, because we have not, our usual people that come in this space haven't spoke tonight either. So we can't go ahead. We're trying to go ahead and read over 200 some comments. We got people sending us stuff in the DMs. So we can't let you come up here and speak tonight. I know this your man. I know we conversate in the background about setting this up, but just to be fair to everybody else, we can't have you come up in the space and actually speak as well if nobody else is coming up and speaking as well too, Marlon. So, any other time we would have you come up and speak, but tonight we just can't have it because he's the only speaker tonight. And this is a Q&A. People are putting their comments in the actual comment section, and we're trying to get to them as much as we can. There's no way we can get to all 200 some comments. So we're trying to keep order as much as possible. We're letting the people who are already popping off talking noise about what we're trying to do, we're giving them an avenue to go ahead and ask a question and trying to get to it. So we're trying to do all we can do. But if this was any other space, we would let you come up here. We'd have had people opening up, coming up here as well too. But because he is the only speaker for the night, it would not be fair. And I know that you do have a relationship with Gabe. You're his campaign manager. We cannot let you come up here as a speaker and come up here and speak right now. I'm just being real with you. Gabe, do you understand what I'm saying?
Yes, sir. I'm following the rules. However you want to do it.
Okay, so like I say, because if other speakers was coming up here to speak, I'd have no problem with you coming up here to speak as well too. So Gabe is the one that's answering the questions. All we're doing is reading what the people say in the comment section and we feeding it back. That's pretty much all we're doing. I get what you're saying, and I don't mean any disrespect to you, but we're just trying to go ahead and try. And it's impossible for us to get to all of these comments as well too. DJ, you had a comment you wanted to read them.
No comment right now. I'm actually looking for one, but just to piggyback over what Gabe said, why we're not supporting a black candidate out in Chicago. Okay, so let's go down to Georgia real quick and shout out to our sister Tamara Shelby Johnson. Ran on a reparations ticket, running against Walnut, did not live in a predominantly black neighborhood, but still advocated for reparations in the majority of y'all up in Troder. And you said all nasty type of disparaging shit against them. You feel what I'm saying? Rather than here on Clubhouse, Twitter, Facebook, ScrewTube. So why should anybody else that is Black American, Freeman, ADOS, FBA, whatever the fuck you want to call yourself nowadays, is all this shit is just really clicked up shit, you know what I mean? Well, why do y'all support it? Or at least those that were living in Georgia anyway, or, why didn't we have the same love and affection for her? Because she couldn't answer all the questions. She don't live in a predominantly black neighborhood. So being that y'all gave her a lot of the smoke and disrespected her, a lot of y'all, you know what I'm saying? Now you know why a lot of black folks don't want to run. And this woman, again, was running against Warnock. Warnock don't got y'all best interests at heart. This dude had Jim Crow Joe Jangles at Martin Luther King's church. Come on, man. But y'all want to complain to Gabe and troll Gabe and do all this other shit to Gabe. And y'all doing the same shit to Marcel and starting to see. Come on, what's wrong with y'all, yo? We got to start having some more unity and respect and decorum, not just for ourselves and our people, but other folks that want to come into our communities and actually help out and try to do the right thing on our behalf. Go ahead, Tom.
Real quick, Dr. Deborah, she had a question. She said, she says, she wants to know, Gabe, how are you polling ahead of the start of early voting on Saturday?
That's a really good question. We don't have a polling apparatus yet, but our informal, our phone banks are up and running thanks to Marlon. And let me say something quick about Marlon. He has been a genius in organizing this campaign, and I hope there'll be an opportunity in the future for the two of us to talk to you all about some of the strategies he's used and whatnot. In any case, we don't have numbers, but we have informal numbers, and they look good. I mean, here's the fact of the matter. I'm the only candidate who has gotten more than, there's one person who ran before out of all of the other candidates. They got 800 votes, in an election where 13,000 people vote. I got a quarter of the votes the last time I ran, and the people who are the other people that ran, Will's not running again, the sitting alderman isn't running. So I'm the person who's gotten the most votes out of anybody. We raised the most individual money up until the point where the big PACs came in and started dropping big money and people started financing their own campaigns. But actually going out and asking people for money, we got the most individual dollars. We have the most money from out of state. So by the indicators we have available to us, we appear to be doing rather well. We are going to have polling more than likely. That may remain internal, but in any case, we're gonna be measuring things as closely as we can. But we're pretty optimistic. I would say that we're certainly in the front of the pack. I have a lot of name recognition. I'm the only person who's run before, as I say, with one exception, somebody who ran a couple, 8 years ago, and came in 4th out of 6 people. So that's as much as we know, and it looks good to us, but we'll see what happens. I'll tell you, it's been a challenge getting my white supporters to make this leap with me. So the calculation is, are there going to be enough black folks that believe in what we're doing and are willing to get behind us? And are there enough white people who are willing to take this leap with me to get this thing underway? And it's not clear whether that's going to happen or not, but we're giving it our best shot.
Okay, real quick. Let me get to this question real quick. Shoot. Ray, go ahead, because I lost where I was at.
All right. So this was a comment that is basically asking if you think it's a conflict of interest being the leader of the Italian American Heritage Society and for reparations?
Absolutely not. So it's a good question because Italian Americans are incredibly racist. You see more instances of racism than not. But those of us who aren't, and we're a minority among Italian Americans, but those of us who are not have organized, and we've especially organized in the last 5 to 10 years. And I'm the head of the progressive organization in Chicago of Italian Americans, and we've actually worked very hard as a group, especially around the Columbus issue I was mentioning earlier. But we've also done some work in allyship with especially younger freedmen. The youth movement in Chicago is very vibrant, and we've forced the city to include young black leaders in conversations that they tried to exclude them from, even when they initiated them. And the monument stuff is a good example of that. So no conflict at all. In fact, we're modeling the appropriate kind of behavior that allies should demonstrate.
And the second question was, have you spoken with Louis Farrakhan or Dr. Claude Anderson type of leadership that we have in our community?
That's a very good question, and I can tell you that people in kind of the mid-level of management management's not the right word, but middle administration of the nation here are supporting this, supporting my effort. Those of you who are on Facebook, go look for Rabia Muhammad on Facebook. And you can go ahead and even messenger her and say, what do you think about Gabe as an alderman or Gabe's campaign? And there are other people as well. And they support it. And I'm going to work very closely with the nation. I see a future where my understanding is that the folks of the nation, and I know rank and file people are 100% behind reparations, and a lot are behind lineage-based reparations. And there are a lot of people in the leadership, not the top, most visible, but a lot of people in the leadership who support what's being done around lineage-based reparations. So I see a really positive future. And those are people I talk to all the time. I mean, we're in the community together, so it's not like you have to look for someone from the nation. Salim Wakil, who was a very visible NOI intellectual who has now become more mainstream, but still, closely affiliated with the nation, praised us for about 7 minutes on VON, probably the most substantial talk radio, black talk radio station in Chicago over the weekend. So we're well aware of the nation. The nation's well aware of us. And we're looking forward to working very closely with them.
Okay, Black Neighbor wants to know: have you tried to help resolve gang-related issues before jumping into reparations?
Well, I'll say this: we definitely. I've been involved on a hyper-local level. When I moved to 65th and Stony with my wife, we had a really more of a clique than a gang, Stony Spot. And we were able to resolve some issues here. But I think it's a misnomer. People have the impression that resolving gang disputes is somehow easier than doing other things. And it's the opposite. Those are some of the biggest problems we have in our communities. And the economics underneath that and the lack of recognizing the humanity of one another underneath that, I'm going to say what I said before, fundamentally have everything to do with the rotten foundation of this country. They have everything to do with chattel slavery and the culture we've all inherited. People think money is more important than other human beings. People think that we're actually not worthy of, respect and to treat each other well. You got to change America's money to change America's mind. So if you don't want gangbanging, you have to do something about the debt that the government owes to the families of these kids who are gangbanging. Now, I don't know what to tell you about what happens in Latino parts of the city. That's a whole different conversation. But what I can tell you about my neighborhood is I've worked with these kids. I had a program I co-designed with a freedman, a woman with a PhD from UCLA in education research, and we created an award-winning program for high school age kids. And I've seen the results when you engage. We don't have the resources to do that for everyone. Over 3 years, we served about 70, 75 kids. And, that's what we need everywhere. But what we need to make that happen are the resources. And the only way we're going to have them on the mass scale we need them is reparations. And the only way people are going to treat each other differently is if with those reparations we face the past, we acknowledge the harm, we go through the steps. There are 5 stages to reparative justice, and I'm not going to jump into that. But that's first. The quick answer is you do that first. You got to do reparations first. We're not fixing anything else before that.
Well, if you wouldn't mind, I want to hear these 5 steps.
Oh yeah, so this is actually kind of an international, but Camilla Moore talks about this all the time. There are 5 elements. The first is cessation or assurance of non-repetition. That is critical. Restitution and repatriation. Repatriation doesn't necessarily apply in the complete sense, but restitution certainly does. Compensation, which is different from restitution and repatriation. Restitution and repatriation speak more to, what has been taken being returned. Compensation has more to do with the recognition that a harm in and of itself requires redress. Satisfaction and rehabilitation. And what I believe is the rehabilitation is in America involved in doing all of those other steps. That because America is so defined and constrained by money, that when you force America to put the money back that it took away from freedmen, people are going to think about things differently. I believe that if you go through these other steps as well.
All right. Did you guys, let's go ahead and hit some more questions up real quick. Let's hit some questions.
I got one that said, it says, can you ask if he was focused on Black American progression before he met his wife or after?
Black American, like progress, like doing things for Black American. My first the work I started was in 1986 with Budavon and Patterson in Roxbury, Massachusetts. 1986. That's a long time. A lot of y'all weren't even born yet. And the first work I did in Chicago was in 2001, 2002 with the Southside Community Federal Credit Union. And that came out of my work as a journalist in the project. So we saw what was coming. And I'll tell you what, for anybody who is from Chicago in here, that was a crime of international proportions. The UN should have prosecuted for what happened in Chicago around the project. And that had such a dramatic effect on me and a whole bunch of other people that we couldn't help but understand that unless you put in with freedmen, you weren't fighting for justice in America, that everything else is surface compared to what people are willing and able to do in even the government in the United States to Black Americans. And so that was kind of the transformative moment for me. And as a matter of fact, I met my wife kind of during that period, but it was kind of after I had been covering what was happening in public housing, especially the Robert Taylors, Ida B. Wells, Matt Park, for people who know those developments.
Okay. Sit tight, y'all. There's over 250 questions in here right now.
Oof.
Yeah. And Gabe, we're not gonna keep you much longer because I know I told you a couple hours, so we're not gonna keep the space open too much longer. See if you guys
can. As long as you can handle it, I'm good. As long as you can handle it, I'm good. People need to hear from me. I understand. I don't feel like this is. I know there's trolls, but there's also people who are genuinely skeptical and hostile, and they have a right to be, because who am I? And they just haven't met me yet. And so, at some point, I know we will have to wrap up. My voice might give out, but if you want to keep going, I'll keep going. I'll let you know when I'm starting to get a little bit too tired.
Hey, Gabe, I got another question for you. Anonymous DM person. Will Gabe look into establishing a multi-million-dollar municipal bond that is specifically designed to uplift the Black American residents within his ward? And just to repeat it again, will Gabe look into establishing a multi-million-dollar municipal bond that is specifically designed to uplift the Black American residents within his ward?
I'll tell you what, I think that is a fantastic idea. It's something that's come up, but we haven't explored it in depth, it would fit beautifully into some of the other things that we're trying to do. If that person lives in Chicago and they're interested in having a conversation around that, even if they're not in Chicago, but they really are interested in having an engaged conversation, they can feel free to DM me and I would talk to them. I think it's a really smart way to think about this, and it really aligns with what we're trying to do here. So yeah, I think it's a great idea.
Okay, let us check real quick, Gabe. Like I say, and you have to try to scroll down and try to get to some more of these comments as well too. So I think people didn't understand tonight what a question and answer was as well too. A lot of people they assume that that it was just a open interview or whatever, and I specifically said a Q&A. If you've ever seen a Q&A, somebody asks a question. Normally, it's a journalist asking, or somebody asking a person a question, and that person answers. It's not all over. It's not 50 or 100 people asking questions and answers and this and that or whatever. So, like I said, I told everybody before the night that this wasn't going to be just a regular Twitter space as well either. So, a lot of people up in their feelings got their feelings hurt tonight, talking stupid as well on this app as well. So it's best that some of them did go someplace else, because I see in the comment section we got quite a bit of trolls and stuff talking nonsense.
And the sad thing about that is, having to defend this shit, knowing damn well y'all not only trolling in other spaces, y'all bring that over here to Newstoter. And you already know we ain't playing that over here already. So why even come over here with the vitriol, the disrespect? Y'all could go bounce, have your own spaces like y'all been doing all week, trashing this man Gabe. So we giving him a platform to voice his opinion and to voice his candidacy for alderman of Chicago. So there you go right there.
We're giving a platform just so people that's in that area in Chicago, because most of us don't live in Chicago. So people that's on the fence, that's thinking about potentially voting for him or not voting for him, they get to actually hear what he says. Like I said before, we don't endorse Gabe. We're not here to endorse him. We're not promoting him. What we are doing is allowing him to actually say his platform on this Twitter space. That's what he's doing. It's a Q&A. He's telling us, and people, not only that, people are actually leaving questions and stuff like that, and we're reading the questions as fast as we can get them. So, he's saying this information about what he feels, this and that, and, we're trying to read it and get more and more questions. So, I don't know exactly what more we can do about that. And Gabe, what do you feel about people saying that basically you're just pandering, that you're just sitting up here just trying to pander to black people tonight? Because that's one of the questions as well, too.
Well, I want people to understand that when I look at the map of where I did well last time in the election, I did very well. I did well everywhere, but I did very well around the University of Chicago, which is the whitest part of the ward. And I'm running against 10 other people. So the simple math is my best bet is to keep my mouth shut and to wave and smile and tell everyone everything's going to be all right, and that, we're going to do right by people and cut some deals and get in. There isn't an incumbent. So what happens in Chicago is if you're willing to cut a deal and there's nobody in your way, then you can go really far. The worst thing you can do as a white candidate, I mean, look at the reception I'm getting here. Look at what Twitter has been doing since Marcel brought me up. Marcel Dixon, who is to me the gold standard of a reparations politician, brings me on and says, look, just give the guy a chance. And ever since, there has been so much sort of negative reaction. Consider that. Does it really make sense for me to go out of my way? I have other candidates yelling at me in forums because I'm bringing up reparations. They're saying we shouldn't talk about reparations. People don't want to hear this conversation. So it's not pandering. I mean, think about how many people right here. Look at the comments. Look at what people are saying. A lot of people don't want to hear this. A lot of people in the real world do not want to hear anyone say a debt is owed, let alone a white man. On the other hand, if we can do this, you're going to be able, if Marlon and I pull this off, everyone in this room is going to be able to go to any candidate with more than 25% freedmen in their district, in their ward, and say, why aren't you putting reparations first? Look at this man, he did it. Why can't you do it? And you sure as heck are going to be able to say it to any black candidate, because why not do it if it works, right? But the challenge is that it's going to be a risk. But I'll tell you what, to me, it's worth the risk because I believe in this, because I don't think there's any other way forward. I'm not just saying that. So I am sacrificing and I am taking a risk and I'm putting my reputation on the line and I'm letting all of Twitter blow up and half of it say I'm crazy and terrible and wrong and ugly and everything else because I believe this is the way forward for all of us, because I believe in this.
This was an anonymous question, and somebody wants to know, how do you differentiate between Robert Palmer in the Fifth Ward, who's also a pro-reparationist?
Oh, Robert's a great guy, and he did mention reparations when he ran for, I think he ran for Congress, and he has brought it up again. He doesn't have a policy platform that extends that into kind of a local, what he would do locally, and that's the chief difference. I'm talking about how you take the reparative frame and apply it to local justice. For example, the housing thing that I talked about, opening the Freedmen's Bureau, distributing land. He's not talking about anything like that. The most I've heard Robert say, you can look at all the forums, is I support reparations. He said that at the last forum. At the first forum, when I brought up reparations after the forum, he said, well, I support reparations too, but I didn't think to bring it up. That is literally what he said. And that's not to, I like Robert. I think he's one of the better candidates among us. The other candidates said the same thing. We had someone in the audience say, well, why are there all of these black candidates who aren't using reparations? And literally one after the other said, well, nobody told me it was important to them. That's deep. That's worth reflecting on, in my opinion. No one told them they should care about reparations in their campaign, so they don't.
Ray, go ahead. You got a question?
Yeah, another anonymous question is, what are his thoughts on the current state of child welfare like foster care in Chicago, and has he thought about providing more resources so black families can pass home studies and host and adopt?
I'll tell you what, I love the idea of, for any families who want to do homeschooling, I love it. I also love community schools, which is a model that housing advocates in Chicago, education advocates in Chicago have supported. My first priority in terms of child welfare and the programs in the city and the state is actually criminal investigation. I have had students in my program, the program I ran for 3 years, and there's one in particular that I stay in touch with. I'm always thinking about her, because the way the foster system treated her, it was beyond criminal. And the way black children are treated in Chicago and Illinois and in the United States should be prosecuted. It should be a crime to run agencies the way places like DCFS are run. And it doesn't matter what happens to these young people as far as they're concerned. So I think you have to begin with people being a little bit afraid of abusing black children. I also think that you need to, and I've had conversations, this is a challenging thing, but we have to figure out a way to match black children to black families first, and even an incentive to make that happen. I am very concerned about what I see in especially families where white parents adopt black children. I think we have to do our best to avoid that. So lawyers tell me this is extremely problematic, because you can't, certainly it can't be race-based, but again, this may be a place where that Friedman designation is a powerful tool. So those are things I would do. I would also, I want to strike a balance between giving homeschoolers the support they need to educate, and also make our public schools so attractive to especially black families that they want to take their children to them. And there's as I say, a community schools philosophy that I think would help to make that happen, as well as freeing up some of the discretion for teachers to teach what they want. It's a complicated situation, but I'll start by saying the way that children, and especially black children, are treated by the system and the welfare system in the city and the state is one of the most offensive, egregious things I've ever seen.
Okay, I had a question real quick. Let me get back to it. Professor had a question. Let me scroll down and see if I can find it. Give me 1 second, 1 second, 1 second. Trying to find that question that Professor had. Like I said, there's so many different questions. Trying to get to it. If y'all DJ, if y'all see that question that Professor had a question. It was about it was a pretty long question as well too. Hold on 1 second. Give me.
Pastor, if you could find your own question, because it's just so many of that, you know, you wrote it, just DM it to one of us and we can read it like that too. If you could hear Professor.
Yeah, let me because I think because I keep going back and forth and I'm coming back and I'm coming out or whatever. So let me I was just
Yeah.
I was just there, but I'm going almost between my notifications and the actual questions as well too. So that's my mistake because normally we're not going back and forth looking at questions and stuff like that too. So it's kind of thrown me off a little bit myself. But Professor, I'm sorry. I did mean I tried to get to that question. I'm trying to find it right this second. I tell you what, until I can find that question, let me ask Diane on YouTube. She had a question. She says, "What do you think about reparations ordinance the current black mayor did not support? Instead, it got buried in a subcommittee to die out."
I think it's fine, and I actually have tremendous faith in Alderman Coleman. It's more focused on corporations, and it's a good. What they're trying to do in the city right now is good. They're trying to hold corporations accountable for their role in slavery, and I'm all for it. I just sure wish that we wouldn't call everything reparations, and even the subcommittee is a reparations subcommittee. But I'm going to say my piece about it, and then if a freedman, alderwoman wants to be the chair of a reparations subcommittee, there's a point at which I just have to go along with that. And I'll say, my view is that it shouldn't be called that, but I do believe we have to hold these corporations to, account for their role. And I think that there's, substantial redress. There have been some real, in my view, I've watched the few meetings she's been able to convene, and it seems like they're just really kind of dragging their feet. I want her to have a robust budget, and I want the head of that committee that that the subcommittee is housed in, which is Health and Human Relations, to give her a lot more. She needs a lot more support, and I actually would like her to just be the chair of the committee, so that her subcommittee would get all the support that she needs. She's a fantastic leader. She is the alderwoman of much of Inglewood, which is an important freedman community in Chicago, and I support what she's doing. And of course, the mayor buried the legislation that is supposed to promote justice for freedmen. She's been and this is probably the soundbite that's going to ruin my career. She's been anti-black since she got elected, and that's a hard thing for me to say because I know that doesn't sound right coming from me. But the evidence is overwhelming, and it's harder for me to see the consequences of the decision she's made. But it didn't surprise me that she buried it.
Okay, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go ahead and close this space out for the night, y'all. I appreciate you coming in, Gabe, and just explaining your platform to the actual Twitter space as well, too. So we're gonna go ahead and.
My pleasure. Thank you guys so much. Thank you so much.
Okay, Ray, DJ, y'all want to go ahead and say anything before we close this out for the night?
Well, you already know late night space.
Yeah, we're gonna be heading to a late night space part 2. So you guys have a chance, come on through. Ray, you got something you want to add?
Well, no, a lot of people just want to talk to you. So would you be willing to do another space where people can come up and talk? This is just what I'm seeing from the comments. A lot of people, I guess, don't like the fact that we held a space this way.
Well,
I mean, I think. Sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Gabe. No, go ahead. And that's the reason why I said, late night space, whatever. Y'all can pull up and voice your opinion. I ain't not knocking nobody from getting on the mic. Gabe, if you want to come over here, You know, on the late night space, we be up till 7 in the morning sometimes. I don't know if you got, all night long. You know what I'm saying? But you're welcome to come over there and and voice whatever opinion you want to voice too. Well, go ahead, though.
I'm happy to loan a half hour to the late night space, but I'll just say that a lot of people I feel like are not just curious, but really want to engage in kind of verbal combat, and I'm just not for that. Look, reparations. I can't be doing this work.
Those
you know what I'm saying?
Dropped in our spaces. They get dropped instantly. I don't deal with that. You know what I mean? And I ain't got time for that. So I don't drop to somebody. For that. If y'all plan on coming over there to troll, wasting your time, man. I'm letting y'all know that right now.
But yeah, I'll do a little bit of it, and please let me just reiterate to everyone. I'm so grateful you guys handled this way. Not only does this kind of cut down on anything getting too messy, but I think a lot more people got questions asked because of how you managed it, and all of us are under time constraints, and especially me. I mean, I have tremendous love and respect for the national movement and the national conversation, but we're trying to win a local election. So I want to satisfy as many people as possible in these kinds of spaces, but at the same time, we can only lend so much bandwidth. So I'll be happy to jump over to wherever you're going to be at for a little while, and then I have to bounce and tell my wife I love her and eat some junk food I should eat. Real quick. If you want to send me a link or whatever.
Yeah, real quick, Gabe, before you go, because I found Professor. He just DM'd me, so let me ask you this. Let me ask you this question real quick. He says, Gabe, what is your true inspiration for coming into the Freedmen movement? This is a movement that is more than just about reparations. It's about immigration, removing qualified immunity from the police, equitable funding for education, quality health care, fair housing, etc. So he wants to know exactly how you feel about that.
Yeah, and I'm in favor of all of those. I understand, and in fact, that's kind of what I'm trying to explain when I talk about taking the reparations frame and bringing it to local reparative justice, is that I understand that this isn't just about the federal debt that's owed. Where I'm a stickler is I say that's the only place, in my opinion, the capital R reparations word should be put is in that federal thing. But I understand the local. I'm doing the local. I believe in the local because all politics is local, Chad. Someone just recently said that. So I understand that it's bigger than that. And the reason I'm inspired to do this work is because I think that this is the epicenter. I want to do what's right, and I want to do meaningful things with my life, and I want to engage in what's real. And to me, this is the very heart of the struggle in this country. I should do this, everyone should do this, or they should move. That's my opinion. If you're not fighting for this, you're really not fighting for what's important for the whole country. That's just my point of view. So that's the best answer I can come with right now. But Professor, jump over to the other space if you want.
Yeah, because we're going to go ahead and close this one out. DJ, go ahead and start that other space up. I'm going to come through for a little bit as well, too, so we can go ahead and keep the conversation rolling as well, y'all. So I appreciate everybody that came out tonight to the space. I know it wasn't quite the type of space we've ever had before. It was a Q&A, and, that was just to try to keep some of the drama down. But if you've seen the comments, you've seen exactly what was popping off and what was going to pop off. So, we're going to... Yeah, we're going to go ahead and we're going to, because I'm not for all that nonsense in these spaces here. So straight up, other people want to keep BS going. They can keep BS going in these spaces. But here we're going to have actual dialogue. We're going to have actual conversation and stuff like that. So people are more than free to do what they want to. I didn't tell Eddie and everybody to come to space either. So if anybody got their feelings hurt, they got their panties in a bunch tonight, oh, well, that's just tough shit. On the real, though, that's it. I appreciate all you coming out to the space tonight. Y'all go ahead and check DJ Late Night Space coming out, and we're going to be there in a second as well, too. So peace and thank you, everybody. Appreciate you coming, Gabe, and explaining your platform to the people. And like I say, we didn't endorse you, but the people, they wanted to hear what you had to say. So I feel like we did an adequate job in doing that. So
yes, outstanding work. Thank you so much.
All right, so.
Jumbotron real quick. Let us go for like another 60 seconds or 30 seconds. Tyler, get in the Jumbotron space on the far left side. I'll DM you too, Gabe.
Okay.
All right. So let's So that's it. Then we're gonna go ahead and close the space out, and we'll see you guys at DJ's WPI space. So y'all guys, you make sure you come through. If you got time, just hang out for a little bit if you can, and we'll see you then, guys.